Hey everyone, welcome to CBS Suite for Telemetry. I'll paste the agenda in the chat again. This release cycle is going to be shorter, but we want to have a brainstorm session with everyone to come up with ideas for the next release. So the first topic is about cluster contents. That is something that we've been discussing with Sam, and Sam is here on the call. So if you want to take us through that, that'd be great. I pasted the content of the other document into an Etherpad, so everyone can see that.
Let's see if I can find the document. What's the name of the Etherpad?
I just shared it. So the first one, yeah, we don't have history in the chat, so that'll be
cluster contents telemetry.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the first one, and we have.
Okay, right.
Yep.
Sorry, I needed a reminder.
No
okay, so the basic concept here is we would like theoretically to do something like deduplication or tiering, things of this nature. There are already existing sort of proto-implementations of these things, but one of the challenges we've been running into is it's difficult to make good decisions about the heuristics we're going to use for doing these things without knowing much of anything about the average store contents of different kinds of clusters. So for instance, what broadly speaking does a cloud RBD deployment look like? What broadly speaking does an RGW deployment look like? And how much do they vary between users? Like, is there how much commonality is there? Especially for RGW users, we're interested in object size distribution. So to that end, it would be interesting to have a telemetry channel and tool which crawls a user's cluster and generates a kind of a digest of its contents. Exactly what goes into this, I think, is a matter of some discussion, but some obvious things would be object size distribution, information about blue store fragmentation, and for deduplication, we'd be interested in sampling the object set and predicting what kind of deduplication ratio we can get for different fingerprinting algorithms and target chunk sizes. So I think the workload here is essentially step one would be create a tool that uses the Libretto's library to crawl a target pool or a target cluster, one or the other, and generate this and provide a sort of a plugin framework for generating these derived parameters from the pool. And step two would be creating a way to report this up through telemetry. There are some little challenges here. The crawling process could take a while, and we don't want it to interrupt client I/O. So it needs to be pausable and resumable, and it needs to be throttled so it doesn't, affect foreground work too much. It would be a bit of a stretch to say that this is planned for S, since no one has actually volunteered to work on it. But if anyone's interested, let me know.
Yeah, and I wonder, so.
Sorry, I wanted to say one other thing. Last time I looked at the sort of literature for this stuff, there had been a Microsoft Azure paper, if I'm remembering correctly, from a while ago that talked about some of their large-scale cluster workload characteristics, but there just isn't much like this in the literature. It would be great, I think, actually, not just for Ceph users, but for kind of everyone, to have this kind of information available publicly. Obviously, this can't be the kind of thing that gets turned on by default. A user would have to do this on purpose and then be willing to give us the data. But I think a fair number of users probably would be. So.
Right, and we heard actually at Ceph.com that several users were happy to share such information, which is good news.
There wouldn't have to be anything additional other than the existing setup, the existing opt-in setup, right?
A little bit more. They would need to actually, whatever this tool is, the existing telemetry machinery isn't like well tuned to, or isn't already set up, I think, to do background work. So somehow the background work has to be kicked off, and then that stuff needs to be slurped up into telemetry. So it's probably a two-step process. You have to deliberately do this thing, and then you have to enable the channel. Because we probably want to make it so that people can run this tool and then keep the contents to themselves, if they wish.
I see. Makes sense.
And how would you, so like in very busy clusters, we would need to understand the overhead on performance. So like you said, it should be, we should be able to pause and resume that. But
I mean, I think you probably give it a pool to use as its metadata dump, so that it can record in a different Rados pool its progress. As far as the overhead part, I'm actually not too fussed about it. I think if we just give it the ability, like as a version 0, if we just give it the ability to have a static throttle, or the number of objects and or bytes per second it's willing to process, then users can set that as low as they need to. We can get smarter later, especially with mclock client profiles, but I don't think that needs to be done immediately.
okay.
I mean, would it make sense as a first step to do this like an offline operation that a user just intentionally does when they know that the load is going to be low, and then and later, like kind of what we did with the read balancer stuff, right? And then incorporate it with throttling as an online operation.
I mean, I don't think there's much of a difference. The throttling part is like really, really simple. It's just the loop counts how much it's done recently and sleeps every so often. That's not, I don't think, all that difficult. And I think a user's going to have to kick this off. Something like Rook could build this in as a background tool that it just spins up its own little pod to do. But for everything else, I don't think Ceph ADM has an obvious way to do this kind of thing. So I think a user will have to pick a machine and actually run it. Or use their own orchestration framework to do it. Later on, we can build it in Ceph ADM or something, but not as worried about that for now.
Thanks, Sam, for taking us through that. Does anyone have any questions on the subject, or comments, ideas?
Yeah, just I think in terms of getting people to work on it, I think it. I know there's already plans for this, but defining what exactly needs to happen and just expanding on the high level idea will help just kind of get the scope of everything. But I know that's already implied.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess we can move to the next topic. I see that I don't know if Nizam, you added the thoughts on exposing some metrics for dashboard, or I'm not sure who added that, but I'll be happy to jump to that since we have you in the call.
Yep, I added that, and we can discuss whenever we start discussing that. Sure.
Yeah, so I know this subject we've been talking about it, like about this idea, and are there any specific metrics that you have in mind to collect?
Mostly what we are looking is, right, so the pages that the user is visiting. So like what we want to identify is like the most visited page in the dashboard, and probably something like that, that we can identify those areas in the dashboard, and mostly and probably we could try to put more focus on those sections in the dashboard. So that's what we are trying to do, but I don't think there is any metrics in place for this. I don't think there is any groundwork for this one at all in the dashboard. So this is like I'm just starting the discussion right now. Probably we could maybe sometime around we could catch it up, actually start thinking about the implementation at some point. I don't know if this is valid from a telemetry from your work perspective, but yeah, just wanted to get some insights here.
Yeah. So basically, there are two general rules. If we can collect that, I mean, if there's if the information exists somewhere and we can collect, it's great. And then we need to make sure that there are no sensitive information there. So, for example, if you want to get some, a broader sense of what features of the dashboard user actually uses, we need to make sure that however you choose to define that. So, for example, if it's a URL or any path that represents the feature, we need to make sure that it is sanitized and that it does not have any revealing information about the user, any keys or whatever that can be considered sensitive information.
Okay, yeah, makes sense. Yeah, from generally speaking, from the dashboard perspective, or at least on the URLs, right? We don't pass any sensitive information there when we are calling some API request or something like that, apart from the the auth request that we are doing. But that won't be telemetrized anyway. So yeah. But on the other pages, I think most of the time we are good from the sanity perspective. Yeah.
So what would be like how would that look like? Would you have like would you just have a list of whenever the user accessed a certain feature? Like do you keep any track of that currently?
No.
Or
Not at all. We don't keep any track at all. So if we do, we need to do it from we need to do it and store it on the manager itself, right? And that way you guys can consume it. That's how the implementation is, right? I'm assuming this.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. So far, we don't have anything like that in place. Maybe that's something we have to do from our side, and then that should be exported to the telemetry, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and would daily resolution for that, like if the daily frequency would be?
No, I need to start this discussion within the team itself. Then probably later on I will come back to you with more clarity here.
Okay, yeah. What I'm saying is that the reports that we sent usually they're sent on a daily frequency.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we need to build it. So if you're tracking it all the time, and you keep it, you need to keep it in some database that we can, pull the stats from, because we will be looking for that when we compile the report, which is once a day. So So if we just have a snapshot of what's happening at a specific point in time, it's probably not what you want. You probably want to have some time series data or data that represents the the delta from the last time that we pulled that information, which is usually once a day. So
Okay. And when this data is shown in the telemetry, right, does that get deleted after it's shown in the telemetry, or that data is persisting in the manager?
oh, so we don't keep it anywhere in telemetry. So we just yeah, that's what I meant. Like we take whatever exists when we compile the report, and then we send the report. It's not persistent. It's we don't store it anywhere. We send it to the backend, and we have it in the backend. But the user cannot access whatever they sent, on the cluster side.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's it. It's an important thing to pay attention to when you design the.
Yeah, when I started thinking about this, I will get in touch with you to understand this bit more.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Does anyone else have any questions or ideas about this topic? Okay, so I guess we can go back to the second item on the list. Yeah, so this is something that every now and then we discuss the idea of having a callback option to let the user know according to the data that they're sending, if there's some discrepancies in their configuration, and have some basic analysis for the user. Again, according to some analysis that we will be doing at the back end. This is quite, it's not straightforward. It means that we need to identify exactly what to collect from the config options, because currently we don't send the values of the config options. We send the keys, but not the values, because they can contain some sensitive information. So if we want to have some sort of basic analysis, we'll have to identify what's considered right, which is, I guess, not simple. We briefly discussed that on Ceph.con. And I don't know if there were parallel projects that try to identify the correct configuration in a cluster. Does anyone know if anyone worked on that in the past or even currently?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, so I wonder if there was any work done on field of identifying the like how correct is the configuration of a cluster. So some programs, some script that can pull certain information from the cluster and understand that it's prone to errors in the longer term, or that things are optimized, like the configuration is basically it looks good.
Okay, I understand. Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't think there's, or I mean, to my knowledge, there's not any script like that. But I don't know if anybody else knows, but I get the concept behind it.
So by configuration here, you mean Ceph configuration, Yorit, or like just like system level configuration?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think we should start with Ceph, but I think as far as users are concerned, they would love us to analyze whatever is possible.
Right, because some effort had gone in the past to like identified mismatched MTU sizes and things like that, which we know are known to cause issues in a Ceph cluster. But then, yeah, that's not a Ceph configuration, and so that's what the motivation behind my question was.
Yeah, so I think it goes back to the subject of simplifying the user experience. When sometimes people say that it is difficult to onboard to Ceph, so they would like to have some virtual assistant that tells them, oh, you have this number of OSDs and that number of monitors, or tools or PGs, or that config option. Maybe you should consider doing this and that, or everything looks good. So when we go back to telemetry, we do collect certain we collect certain fields and information from the cluster. So if we identify what that assistant would need in order to give a review of that configuration of the cluster, we can collect these fields as well, or make sure that we already have them, and have a callback option to the user and let them know, oh, you need to do this and that, or anything that we need to notify them.
I know Blade asked at one point about Ceph doing something like this, specifically with the way we've placed the daemons, like, oh, like if you put the monitors with these other daemons, maybe you shouldn't be co-locating them here, you should put them over there, whatever, stuff like that. But I think we ended up not doing it because we had too difficult of a time commit with good universal rules that work for that. Like there's some that make sense for like bigger clusters versus smaller clusters, and there's some that maybe your particular setup, like that node has more resources than the other one, so UFE makes more sense to put that there than to not co-locate the daemons. So we just had a hard time commit with rules that worked all the time. Because obviously Ceph already has the information on where all the daemons are, but we couldn't come up with anything that I don't know, it would always work, and so we kind of scrapped it, the idea there.
Adam, I missed the first part of your of what you said. Can you please repeat just what you said at the beginning?
What did I say at the beginning? I think it was just Ceph was going to look at something similar to this, specifically for where you're putting daemons. Like, for example, like there's general advice about, like on your admin node, you maybe want the manager here, but maybe you don't want to co-locate the OSDs with that because you use too many resources, stuff like that. But we had too much trouble coming up with good universal rules to get that to work. So we ended up kind of scrapping the idea. I don't know if you would probably run into the same sort of issue there, but I think that's definitely the hardest part with this, is not getting the information and everything. It's what are the actual good rules that you can apply to all the clusters. Because you don't want to be giving like somebody an annoying warning saying that your thing is wrong when they've already thought about it and they know what they're doing. So we scrapped it for that reason. So that would be the hard part, in my opinion, if you want to do something like this.
And you said it happened. You thought of doing it in Pacific?
No, in Ceph ADM. Not in any particular reason. It was probably the Quincy cycle when we were thinking about it. But when we did it wasn't the important bit. It was just that we decided not to do it just in general, just because I said it's just hard to come up with good rules that always apply to all the clusters. Because there's so many different ways you can configure things, and I think it's hard to keep track of like both the configuration of the daemons and the resources on each of the hosts and everything to actually decide what's good and what's bad. So I said we thought it was just too hard to do that in a nice universal way, and we thought it'd be too many people getting annoying warnings that don't actually apply to them unless we were really careful with the rules. And if we're that careful with the rules, how many people does this actually help? So we couldn't come up with a good balance or anything to do that. So we found it was pretty difficult to actually do something like this.
And the initial thought of creating the rules, was it based on customer cases, experiences, or like how did you think of
there's recommendations? So there's some like in our upstream docs, I think, recommendations on how you should configure your nodes. Also just from downstream people, like what they work with, what they've seen with customers, stuff like that. What worked. So it was a mismatch of general advice, but I guess that sort of factors into what I've been saying in overall, which is that there's not a lot of great, well-defined universal rules for doing this. So it's really hard in the end to sort of automate the checks around this stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a good point. And this reminds me of Red Hat used to have this Insights product where you had rules, right, that would do kind of something similar. And it's a hard problem to solve, especially for upstream where people kind of know what they're doing mostly. But I mean, things that qualify in this category are like, okay, if you're running with an incredibly low min size, then this is where you should, stop doing it or something like that. But again, somebody may just come back saying that, hey, I know what I'm doing. So.
Another layer to think about it too is if there is something like this, it's really depends on use case. Kind of like what Adam was saying about it being very broad. What you could do if you wanted to pursue this is narrow it down into different use cases. Like, do we want to focus on the separate different workloads, or I'm thinking of an article that several of us wrote about the PG autoscaler, about like best practices with the PG autoscaler. So you could perhaps like implement something about best practices within the PG autoscaler. So thinking about it more in a modular way like that, dividing it into either workloads or services might help if you go and pursue this.
I also suspect that solving this problem in the general case is probably very hard. Another approach would be to use config profiles to do essentially what Laura's describing. Each component would basically come up with, for Bluester, for instance, different Bluester profiles for different workload types. I suspect it will be difficult to infer from telemetry data very much confidence, is I think my concern. But the other direction would be if we start thinking about what telemetry would hypothetically need in order to make predictions like that. I think they'd be useful even without a feature like this. It would help, for instance, in my example, the Bluester team, try to identify in the wild what config settings seem to be valuable for affecting performance, latency, or reliability. But to do that, telemetry would need to capture information like that. So even if it didn't auto-tune it, having the information would still be valuable, is I think my thesis here.
And what frequency do you think this information needs to be collected?
It depends on the information, and it depends on what we want to do. I don't know. For latency and throughput data, I don't think frequency is necessarily the important constraint. Whatever the frequency we collected at, it's not going to be so high frequency that you can see trends in the immediate workload over time. So we're talking about histograms and compiled data anyway. So I'm not sure frequency is a very sensitive parameter here. We'd be doing something more like collecting per OSD, I don't know, latency and throughput histograms or something
Yeah,
for each collection period.
Yeah, some of these we already collect. So it will be really good if we can identify exactly what else needed to be collected in order to come up with a decent analysis on our side. Even before we send it back to the user or have it available somewhere. Is this the config profiles? Is this something that Matan is working on now, or is this the
I
same?
think that's right, yeah. This got covered in one of the previous, in the core stand-up,
Right.
or the core.
Yep, right.
The idea would be we can create pre-canned, much like what we did for mClock, but in a more general, less frustrating to code way, where we can give sort of a collection of pre-canned profiles that users can just apply as a step. Later on, it may even be expanded to allow users to apply multiple at the same time and define their own, but it's future work, probably.
Yeah, so it's a good idea maybe to pick a use case for that. So not generally to look for one size fits all prediction or recommendation, and maybe just start with simple use case that we look at as a specific scenario, not necessarily everything.
Yeah, and even if we could identify a one-size-fits-all config, it would just show up as the default, I think. It would just change the default.
Right. So, and you mentioned the perf channel, right, Yarit? I think probably the first step should be to see, what kind of analysis we can do from the data that we are currently collecting.
Yeah.
How useful is it? And then make recommendations, or do we even have the ability to make a recommendation with the amount of data we have? I guess we should probably create a plan around that.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And yes, and if if we identify any gaps, even though we do have already a lot of data, so just to make sure, for example, for BlueStore, if we need to collect config options, like the values of them, because we don't have them, and to see whether the data that we have in the perf counters, we can relate it to, when config options being off or on, or with a certain value, that can really give more observability to how the user actually uses that.
Right, and that makes me curious. Do you guys have a rough idea of how many clusters are reporting perf data?
It's in the hundreds. Last time I checked, I did not have it. I need to add it to the dashboard. But yeah, there are quite a few that report.
Cool. Yeah, I was just wondering about what the sample space looks like.
Yeah.
What format would the callback data be in? Like, how would customers be hearing about these recommendations?
So you're asking how will they be hearing about the recommendations?
Yeah, like, will they get some kind of warning in the cluster, or what'll they see how will this recommendation come to them, essentially?
Yeah, that's a very good question. That is also relates to another topic that we have about the tracking of crashes that happened in the cluster. So users want to know, oh, I'm reporting now telemetry, I'm sending my crashes. I want to see if it's being tracked somewhere. So in a sense, it's also calling back to the user. I think the right thing to do, because of all sorts of security issues, would be to have a dedicated space, like we have now the X-ray page for clusters in the public dashboard, but we do need to find a workaround that includes some sort of a secret that users can use in addition to the UID that is generated on their side. I am worried about a scenario that we have this available in the public dashboards. So if a user reports telemetry, they have their UID, they can go to the X-ray page with their UID there and see the entire dashboard for that specific cluster. But we should have an additional piece of information that only the user knows, that they can attach to that UID, and then there they'll be able to see all the recommendations, predictions, warnings, tracked crashes, and all of that. I think the right thing to do, at least for a start, would be to have it available in the public dashboards. Does anyone have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that sounds like a good idea, and I like the idea of having like a personal dashboard that you could check. And I wonder if it'd be better to like, you know, how the Ceph dashboard has goes into a warning state when there's a problem. Would it be kind of like on the user to check this dashboard whenever they feel like it, or would they get some kind of warning in there somehow that they should go check it? I'm not sure, just a thought, but in any case, I think it's a cool idea.
Yeah, so again, the thing is that we need to be careful when, but security-wise, when we want to send messages back to the cluster. Some users would be freaked out to just consider this idea. Some, I guess, wouldn't mind that much, but yeah, so it means that they do need to check that. I guess we can add some notifications, like email notifications, if something important happened. If they provide one, I guess that can happen. But yeah,
I don't think it matters one way or the other. I was just curious about how that would look like for the user, and I don't know if this is or do you know if Grafana supports two-factor authentication? I feel like we've talked about this before, so apologies if I'm rehashing something that's already been talked about.
So we would need to know how they're signing in to Grafana, and basically, if we have some secret that they can add to that X-ray page, then it can be accessible. Again, I don't know if that's the best solution, and we can definitely consider how we can sign in with Grafana, but we need to understand how to map the UID, because this is basically the identifier for the cluster, and that's what the user knows. Yeah, if I guess we will need to associate it with an email, but then again, not all customers users would like to provide an email. Some would just just want to have a random UID.
I wonder if we could store some kind of secret in the telemetry report that isn't report. Well, I know the whole report is sent, but somewhere else then in the cluster that isn't sent to us, so that they would have this secret on their cluster and then use it that way. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, so I think the secret, we should somehow get it from an external source. So if someone has an access to a report, they can basically figure out the UID and the secret, and then they're able to log in to that X-ray page and see that. So if we can think of like a separate external source of having that secret, that would be more secure. I think that, yeah, I think we can continue this this discussion, since we have just a few more topics on the list, if it's fine.
Yeah, I didn't realize time's almost running out.
No worries. Actually, I want to jump to the crash grouping optimization. So I don't see Adam in the call, Adam Bluestar, but he suggested. Oh, sorry, I'll give a short background. So you know that we're sending the crashes, the metadata of the crashes in the crash channel in Telemetry, and then in the back end, we process them and we group them, and we have an entire dashboard for crashes, so everyone can log in and search for crashes by frames in the backtrace, or all the crashes that happened in a specific point release or any release, and then, or just see all the crashes that happened last week, or and so on. But the thing is that the grouping of the signatures can be, well, we need to find probably a finer balance there, because what we currently do is we're taking the backtrace, and then we sanitize it, we remove all addresses and offsets, and then we remove certain frames whatsoever, and then we add some assert data to that, and we create a signature from this input. And then we have a crashes bot that takes all of these signatures and basically map them to Redmine issues. So you probably saw that during bug scraps, or when you just look for a frame in a backtrace, you might see results in tracker. There could be some optimizations for these algorithm, yeah, and Josh had some good ideas in the past to like what we can filter out and what we can replace or remove whatsoever from the frames. And now Adam came up with a very interesting idea. So for all crashes that have in their backtrace any RocksDB frames, he suggested that we remove all of these frames except for the first frame, because it doesn't matter what happens within RocksDB. It just matters what we asked for it in the first place. And this potentially can reduce the number of noise, the amount of noise, sorry, that we have when we create signatures with these frames in them. So that's the background and some updates on the recent developments of ideas. I'm curious to hear if anyone has any experience with the issues that were opened by the telemetry bot in Redmine, and if you have any suggestions how to improve the grouping.
I've seen a couple of issues there. Does it, filter by the component that is going raised to, or does it default to just a single component?
You mean when the bot opens the issue?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So it's a great question. Basically, we're looking for certain identifiers in the crash itself to understand how to what project to assign it to. So, for example, if something says dashboard, we will assign it to the dashboard project in Tracker. If it says Blue Store, we'll assign it to the Blue Store project. But if you see things that are categorized, please let me know. And if there's any suggestion to improve the assigning process.
Yeah, will do. Also, right, this is identified via the logs or the crash traceback that you get.
Yeah, so just the metadata of the crash. We don't have any logs from the cluster. So you mean by identify, you mean how we create the signature for each crash?
No, I mean the categorizing.
Oh, okay, sorry. So for categorizing, yeah. So we'll look at the backtrace.
Okay.
Yeah. If we look at the backtrace, and we actually look at the type of the process. So sometimes, it would say Ceph manager, so we'll assign it to the manager. If it has specific or if it says somewhere in the backtrace SQLite, so we'll assign it to Patrick. Or anything that can imply where it happened, or where it belongs.
Okay.
Yeah. So the backtrace and I think it's process name. Yeah, process name in like a metadata field for that crash.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
Nizam, did you see crashes like tickets in Redmine that looked duplicated to you somehow?
I seen duplicated issues before in the Redmine, but I haven't checked it thoroughly to see what's the actual issue is. But for the dashboard, right, the most helpful thing would be the traceback from the Python or somewhere like that. But the other things that doesn't help much, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, so if you see anything, like if the bot opened 5 issues for an issue that you think is duplicated and you see the backtrace has very minor changes that we can, take care of before we create a signature. So if you can look at the differences and say, oh, we should omit this and that, and then the input for the signature would be identical. So we would have eventually just one signature and open just one ticket, one issue in Redmine. So that would be great to reduce the noise.
Yeah. Also, is there a tag that I can search for these all bot created issues?
Is
Tag or a custom query, something like that.
Custom query for like signatures?
No, the bugs created by telemetry bot.
Oh, the bugs created. Yes, we have it in Tracker. There's a custom query there.
You can filter for source telemetry.
Yeah.
Source telemetry. Okay.
Yeah, and on Tracker you can see like so for example, if I go to can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Cool. So if you go to a project, basically you have the custom queries here, like the crash queue and the crash triage. So you'll see all of the tracker that were created by the bot.
Okay. Yeah, can see that. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, and if you want to see, for example, if you want to go to the dashboard itself, so there's a search page for all the crashes. So if you want to take a look, we have some new fields here. For example, for all the crashes that happened in Quincy, let's say in the last month, for example, you can filter out by that, and then you can see if it's mapped to a tracker here or not. And you can see, for example, certain crashes happened in, sorry, I'm forgetting that it's small sometimes. Is this better? Okay, so you'll be able to see in that time frame how many crashes happened for that specific signature, how many clusters have seen this issue, and how many major versions are affected. You have a more detailed view of how many minors versions are affected, the daemons that this crash happened in, and if there's a sort function. If it's Python exception, you'll see that here as well. So tons of searches are possible with the dashboard, with this dashboard. So it helps to just search directly here, because we currently do not sync it all the time, because we still try to come up with a better grouping and to prevent noise in Tracker. So for example, if you want, like, if you go to a specific signature page, you can see when it was last reported or first reported, how many crashes happened and how many clusters were affected, and you see a breakdown by the versions. And here you can also search. You can see, for example, the frame in the backtrace. And if you click on that, you'll see all of the other signatures that contain that specific frame. So that can be very useful, when you want to look for new crashes that happened in a certain version and so on.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. And I see Laura pasted the dashboard tracker. So yeah, thank you for that as well. But I think
Yeah.
the project is getting assigned to manager rather than the dashboard.
Oh, okay. So let me know and I'll fix that.
Yeah, and we have a dashboard project under the manager. So it comes to
Okay.
there. That's where we mostly look for issues.
Oh, I see. So that's a sub project in Redmine.
Yes, which is under manager, MGR.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay. So there are a couple of issues that. Actually, 3 issues. I guess. Well, kind of out of time, but just maybe one question. Curious to know about a newsletter from Telemetry. What would you think would be interesting to hear about from the project?
I think definitely how many clusters are reporting like the RC or a new version, like kind of what we've been doing to answer that question we've had ourselves. That might be interesting.
Yeah, that's a good idea, Laura. Yeah, so I already set up a dashboard for that. So basically,
Yeah.
that
The SHA project, right?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that this is something that we can definitely include, like in periodic newsletter, just to let the community know how we're doing. Are there any questions, or there are a couple of issues here, but I know we're over time. Was there anything urgent or something that anyone wanted to bring up?
Nothing additional, just for the newsletter thing again. I think you had sent out some stuff previously about like the largest cluster that was reporting or something like that, something to do with the size or the total amount of data that we're reporting, the total size. And I always thought that was interesting.
Awesome. Yeah, it's a good idea. We can have like a quarterly newsletter that lets the community know what we're seeing with telemetry during the last quarter or so. So that could be that's a very good idea.
I think from one of the CLT, right? They are already sending out a newsletter for the Ceph in a whole by including all the components, and I think on quarterly they are sending out the newsletter. I think this is a good idea to include these telemetry items there as well.
Sorry, Nizam, you were saying about the CLT newsletter for the weekly meetings?
Not the weekly, but they announce some other Ceph newsletter or something like that some while ago, and I think they already sent out one some this thing once already in the community. I didn't receive any link, but I saw Zach, right, who's the document owner, so he was collecting the information and trying to send out this newsletter.
Oh, okay. So, I can get in touch with him and ask about that. And yeah, it's a very good idea to include it there as well. Yep. Thanks for bringing this up. All right. So yeah, I guess if no one else has any questions or ideas or anything, I guess we can call it a meeting. Or I think it was a very good session, and thank you everyone for the great feedback. Have some good ideas.
Thanks, Yuri.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah. There's some other sessions today, right? Probably the documentation one is happening right now.
Yeah, I think it is.
Okay.
So we'll see you guys there.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. See you. Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.